Jai everyone. We continue in our exploration of Bhakti, Bhakti Yoga. And the difference between Bhakti and Bhakti Yoga is that Bhakti is simple, innocent devotion that can be evoked anywhere and everywhere through a sunrise or through a deity or a church, a visit to a church or a mosque or a temple. It just happens spontaneously. Whereas Bhakti Yoga is a series of disciplines, a series of knowledge and understanding, so that we make a conscious choice to bring the divine closer to us and take ourselves closer to the divine, the universal divine principle, Ishvara, and to cultivate attitudes of surrender and service, not necessarily to be good, but to evolve in our consciousness and to understand our role in the divine orchestration of this whole world. So the yoga is the science of the divine, whereas pure bhakti is the sentiment, the feeling. What it has been noticed, not just by me, but by the tradition, is that bhakti comes and goes. If we are feeling good, we are feeling grateful, we experience bhakti. But sometimes we get distracted in our material life, in our material bodies, in our material aspirations, and we forget about the divine. And sometimes when our life is not going the way we would like it to, then also we do not experience that bhakti. In fact, we may feel enraged or angry. But if we have gone through a course of understanding with Bhakti Yoga, which takes a little time, but it's worth the while, then our Shraddha, our conviction that the divine is there, whatever is happening for the best, that I am held and guided in all of this, and that the divine is not just out there, but everywhere and inside me, becomes a living conviction. And it has been found that bhaktas, the bhakti yogis are called bhakti yogis or bhaktas. The bhaktas, when their difficult time comes, their conviction becomes even stronger. Their strength enhances in their difficulty, because they do not feel abandoned by the divine, but they feel like, oh, the divine wants me to understand something, see something. So they feel partnered by the divine, both with light and through darkness. And so that is the difference between bhakti and bhakti yoga. Although in short, sometimes I will say bhakti, but I want you to know that I am really talking about Bhakti Yoga through this session and through several more sessions that I will be leading on Bhakti Yoga. In the current world, people have forgotten that Bhakti Yoga is a systematic teaching with disciplines, with understandings, with knowledge, with a map of things connected. And it has become synonymous with bhakti, and bhakti has become synonymous with chanting, kirtan, bhajans, jam, pilgrimage. And while all those are very essential elements of Bhakti Yoga, it is not the total of Bhakti Yoga. As always, with anything connected to the Upanishads, to the Vedas, there is always a thinking element connected to Bhakti Yoga. And probably one reason that Bhakti Yoga is so misunderstood is because throughout the Bhagavad Gita, we don't have a specific chapter on Bhakti Yoga. While we have teachings on Gyan Yoga in chapter 2, we have teachings on Karma Yoga in chapter 3 and 4. We have teachings on Upasana Yoga in chapter 6 and in many other chapters. Bhakti Yoga doesn't have a specific chapter, so that's amazing, right? But then actually every chapter is connected to Bhakti Yoga. So to the knower of the scripture, there are many, many verses woven throughout the Bhagavad Gita that give us, point us, that give us an indication of Bhakti Yoga and point us towards it. But it comes through in the oral teaching process. And in fact, it is said that Bhakti Yoga is such an important yoga because it purifies the ego, because it resolves the ego back into the substratum of divine consciousness. It purifies us in the process. It shows the ego its place. It shows the ego its place not in terms of diminishing the ego, but in terms of protecting the ego. That really the other journeys then can take off from this anchoring within Bhakti Yoga. As I had mentioned earlier, that the traditional way to teach the yogas is first Jnana Yoga, then Karma Yoga, then Upasana Yoga, and then showing how all of this was really Bhakti. So Bhakti Yoga can be understood as the substratum. However, I'm changing the way I teach the yogas in the Vedic way. I'm actually beginning with Bhakti Yoga. And I have my reasons for it. And I think in the 21st century, where there is so much distraction and so much so much unsettling for the ego, that a good, solid settling into bhakti may be better. Because then everybody comes on the same page in terms of trusting a higher power. And in Bhakti Yoga, the duality is still maintained. Bhakti Yoga is not a non-dual teaching. It has some elements of it, but it still is an aspirational teaching of the divine. Kind of, we are told by our guru or by our teacher that, look here, this divine that you are worshipping on an altar is ultimately a representation of the divine within you. But we go, yes, 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 yes. But we don't understand it. Not fully. Theoretically, yes. Not fully. And that's okay. So in divine, in Bhakti Yoga, duality is still maintained. In Karma Yoga, duality is still maintained. In Upasana Yoga, it is kind of a special duality or a special non-duality, qualified non-duality, where sometimes we will feel that we are one, sometimes we will feel separate, or at least we'll know we are kind of one, though we are feeling separate. It's really only in Jnana Yoga where the gap, which is cognitive, between Ishvara and Jiva gets resolved, not just theoretically, but hopefully as a conviction internally. And that is when some important things happen, transpire. So it's a journey. And I have been teaching now Bhakti Yoga for 2 or 3 sessions, maybe Shani will know exactly. So I was thinking before I start a topic, which is a very important topic, I wanted to just get some feedback in terms of the fact that many of you are from different religious backgrounds. You may be active in your religions or non-active, but you have different culturalization around the concept of God. How are these teachings of Ishvara sitting with you, which is a universal principle, more akin to cosmic intelligence? It is not a person or a thing. It's a principle, a presence, an intelligence. And how is it sitting with you? Are you thinking about Ishvara as the Vedic way teachers come back to these teachings and help you teach them further? So share with me, will you? If you raise your hands, then you can speak to me.
Pragya has her hand raised. Pragya, let's hear from you.
Okay. So I learned about Ishwara a few years ago as your student, and my understanding of Ishwara, which continues to this day, is of kind of going back to dual from non-dual, and is, I mean, Ishwara for me is a goddess that supports me. External to me, somebody I can talk to, pray to, and that helps me.
Beautiful. Yes, so Ishvara can be whatever form you want Ishvara to be in, or formless. It's a very eclectical journey of yogis with Ishvara. And definitely, if there is any entity, intelligent entity that hears you, the words you speak and the words you don't speak, that is Ishvara. And we will examine that. So, Pragya, continuing this conversation, you have many others who you speak to. How does it feel different? And how has been conversing with Ishvara been a psychological help for you? Not just in terms of, oh, I expressed my need and the need got met, because that doesn't always happen. Because what happens is what is best for us, not what our ego thinks should transpire. But when you talk with conviction, or when you chant Om with conviction that you're calling Ishvara's name, you toggle that vibration and you become seen. Does that happen to you?
Pragya, you're muted, dear.
Yeah. Sorry. I may talk with Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati at my altar, but I think Ishwara is the one that I give a prayer to when I'm sending an email. More of my sort of day-to-day interactions, I think, is how I've sorted it for myself.
Right.
Does that answer?
And so how does that help you is what I want, that statement of, and you may say you've not observed that as yet. That's okay. But have you noticed something?
Yeah, it dissolves my ego.
Okay,
Because,
that's what I was going for. You kind of let it go. You
lets me do what I want to do for the good of all.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Good. But that's because you've already gone through a course of bhakti, karma, jnana. But that's good. That's good to hear, even for the new students. that we are going to approach the science of divinity. And we heard some words like, I let go. What does that mean? Does that mean fatalism? Does it mean not controlling? What does it mean? We're going to come across more of these teachings. Any other feedback?
Jason has his hand raised, and in the chat, there are also some shares.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. I would just say that I'm very comfortable with the recognition of a supreme intelligence. I mean, it's so very obvious, and that certainly helps me whenever I have a moment of doubt or confusion or kind of lose my path. I don't think I've gotten to the state where it dissolves the ego. But I'll work on that. I'll pay attention.
Yeah.
And we can talk more about what dissolving the ego means.
Mm-hmm.
Because dissolving the ego actually means dissolving to connect with a bigger ego, right?
Okay.
And so it strengthens us. It's not about diminishing. And
Yes,
also when we
okay.
connect to a bigger ego,
Mm-hmm.
it has the well-being of a lot more people. And so you become more strengthened, more Shakti.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay.
And
Yeah,
maybe
so
even
it's not traditional dissolving the ego as in be small.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's something, and we'll come to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful, Arya. You have some written comments? This is good feedback for me.
Let's hear from Jason, and then we'll look through the comments here. Jason.
Hello. When I first started this, I'm actively Jewish. I'm semi-observant. I was wondering how that was going to integrate with my Judaism and the idea of Ishvara. And I'm finding it not to be a conflict, but instead an integration process. And I've seen statements now that I didn't recognize before as talking about unity in Judaism. A couple of prayers like that to be refreshing and actually strengthening to me in a way that I had not previously expected.
Beautiful. Yeah. My Baba, my guru used to say, because sometimes in his discourse, some Christians would sit down or some Muslims would come from across the town and sit. And often they came for physical health, Ayurveda, but then they would stay over for the night, for the evening satsang. And Baba would often say that after my satsang, you will walk away a deeper Christian or a more committed Sikh, because when you go into the science of bhakti and when you understand the beautiful invitation of the super boundless Upanishads, we're talking about consciousness here. Ishvara is the ultimate divine consciousness. How can we bind it? And how can it not strengthen the perspectives of Ishvara in any religion or any culture? It will. So, it doesn't have any of those limitations. The only limitation that may appear to be a limitation, but I urge all of you to keep an open mind, is when I talk about Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or Saraswati, Lakshmi, Durga. These are gods and goddesses in Hinduism, which is a religion that emerged from the Vedas, after the point of the Vedas. But so these are shared gods and goddesses from the Vedic tradition and then the Hindu tradition. But the way I will share them is more of their purity, their archetypical significance, or the principle behind it, which I've already explained to you, that, they would be this walking that I have to do which I always do, between the Vedic tradition and its unfoldment in the Hindu culture, and I'm a practicing Hindu. So there can be some crossover, but again and again, I'll stay so open and transparent that we can bring in Judaism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Catholicism, any Sufism. We can bring, if you have those in your background, you can really bring them into the mix. I'm working on this book. I'm actually putting my final touches on it, in which I have shown a yogi's journey through Bhakti, Karma, and Upasana Yoga, built around Ishvara. And it's been really fun to bring in elements from other traditions to show the same truth. Because if truth is truth, it cannot belong to one people. It cannot belong to Jews. It cannot belong to Hindus. It has to belong to all of us. And Ishvara represents that level of existence. So I'm glad that you found no conflict. And I developed further on what you said to say, keep searching, because you are being led into the science of spirituality. And using the word science kind of like more like systematic understanding, universal understanding of spirituality. Wonderful.